How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Adam, how are you?
I'm doing well. Is that accurate that Gregg probably shouldn't have been hired? He's not entirely at fault for what we saw, but it was probably the right move. Not probably, I think it was the right move to move on from him.
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree with you. I don't think he ever should have been rehired after his initial cycle, but he was. And to your point, I don't think he did the best job with this cycle. And yeah, it was time to move on. We don't have a ton of time before our World Cup right here on home soil, and so I think it's important that they move fairly quickly with this next search process and get somebody in and give them time to put their fingerprints on this group of players.
Is it unfair, or do we look at the process and we say it's the process that is poisoned? That the fact that, they could have easily moved on from Berhalter, who I think did a good job getting the U.S. through the group stage at the World Cup, and they lost to Netherlands, a team with a lot more experience and probably a lot more high-end quality than the U.S. in the round of 16 in Qatar. But because of what happened afterward, they probably should have moved on. What are your thoughts on the process that has to be that they have to go through?
Yeah, it's interesting. Without knowing a lot about what happens sort of behind the curtain, I still find the fact that they rehired him just completely fascinating after all of the controversy, and it just seemed like such a natural transition point. But to your point, I think people have a lot of recency bias about Berhalter. I think they look at the Copa as a failure, rightfully so. But there were also some high moments. I think getting out of the group in the World Cup and performing admirably was a success. I think they won CONCACAF Nations League. They won the Gold Cup. They beat Mexico in Mexico several times. So there were high points, and so it's difficult to see those now when emotions are running high coming off this failure of the Copa America. But I do hope that there is a more comprehensive, expansive search for the next coach, and I hope that there is sort of a bigger emphasis on, the broader vision and the experience, and so I think there's some good candidates available. I just was reading that Jurgen Klopp declined the first pass by U.S. Soccer, which is disappointing, but not necessarily surprising. So I think there are some other good candidates out there that I hope we do our due diligence and bring in the right person.
Look, I would be in complete support of Jurgen Klopp being the next manager of U.S. Soccer, but he just retired or left Liverpool because he was out of energy. The timing, I'm just going to say the timing is not right for Klopp to take over unless you say, don't do anything for a year and then, come to us like a year from now. And I'm not sure there's enough time a year from now to get, Klopp's system and all the players on board. But I don't know, maybe you could do that with Jurgen Klopp. But the timing to me is not is not ideal for that. Real quick about the players essentially went as far as to rehire Berhalter as anything else because they were almost to a man, obviously not Giovanni Reyna, supportive of Berhalter coming back. Is that a poor process? We saw this with like UNC football back in the day where, Karl Torbush wins a bowl game, players love him, and they sort of, let's run that back with Karl Torbush. Obviously, it didn't work out. Can you allow the players to make your decision?
No, I think there's nuance to it. I think I hope they learn from it is what I'll say. I think last time I understand why they put a lot of weight behind the players' opinions. This is a group of players that is probably a higher profile group of players than we've ever had before. That's not to say that they're better players than we've ever had, but they're higher profile. They have louder voices. And Matt Crocker, who makes these decisions for U.S. Soccer at the time, was new, right? He was coming in. He was fresh. I think he maybe came in I don't want to say scared to make a big move, but rehiring Gregg certainly was safe, especially with the backing of the players. So I would say that this time around, I hope he just learns from it. I hope he learns not to bend to the will of the players quite as much. I think the players' opinion is still important, but I think what's more important is that we get somebody with experience, with a track record of success, with the right, set of intangibles to lead this group in 2 years' time.
Austin Deleuze is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show, at Austin Deleuze on Twitter. Is back with the club now. North Carolina FC is a legend there. Also a legend at Wake Forest. All right, so the players. I know you and I have texted back and forth about this. The bottom line for me is Gregg Berhalter could have been a freaking wizard, right? And I'm not sure that the players are we don't have as many impact players. I think we have more depth and more good players than we've ever had in the system. But how many of these players truly impact and are capable of changing the game? I watched Copa America last night. Darwin Nunez didn't score, but boy, was he noticeable every single moment he was on the field, near the ball, even after the game. There's nobody, not even Christian Pulisic, their best player, impacts the game in those ways. Is it fair to say we're just not there in terms of our squad?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fair to say. I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, right? Coming after the loss to Colombia and then the draw against Brazil, kind of mentioned that, the reality is our group of players, we're somewhere in between those two results, right? I think we're not at the level of those teams, of the Uruguays, of the Colombias, of the Brazils, and watching the Euros as well. We're certainly not at the level of Spain, even of England, who hasn't performed to their full potential. But yeah, I think, outside of the coaching search and who the next coach is going to be, I think U.S. soccer fans need to take a look in the mirror and kind of reset their own expectations. I think a lot of things need to go right that are outside of our control for us to make any real deep run in a World Cup. That's just kind of the reality of the situation and the reality of the group of the players that we have.
Christian Pulisic is certainly a world-class player, right? He was one of the top, he made the top 11 in Serie A. We don't have to worry about that. I think you and I have differing opinions of Tyler Adams. He hadn't played much football. I think he's played 5 matches in a year. I think Adams is a Champions League caliber, defensive midfielder, the traditional number 6. I think I like Anthony Robinson. I like Serginho Dest when his head's on straight, but he's also not healthy. I don't know anybody else on the roster that demands a spot that is vital, critical for his club that he's playing, and almost all these guys are playing in Europe.
Yeah, for sure. Weston McKennie's another one I would point out. His performances for Juventus this season were pretty top notch, but we have not seen that form translate in, when he puts on the U.S. national team jersey. But yeah, the list is not long of guys that are being counted on week in, week out by big clubs in Europe. We have a lot of guys that do play for big clubs in Europe, but they are not, first guy on the team sheet type of players. And that's the difference right now, I think. And I hope that that's something that maybe we can remedy over the next 2 years, that some of these players do progress further in their development and become, big-time players that are performing week in, week out. But that's not where we're at right now, for sure.
Can we get Jurgen Klinsmann back?
I want Mourinho. Bring Mourinho. If we're gonna, turn this into silly season, let's really lean into it and let's have some fun.
Pep Guardiola. Look, Sabi, Hernandez is available, right? He's not at Barca anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody's brought him up.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, all jokes aside, there are some high-quality coaches available. I think, again, the reality is, do we need to go hire a high-quality coach? Yes. Do we also need to reset our expectations? Yes. I think we got to do both.
All these things can be true at the same time. Austin Deleuze, back with NCFC. All right, you're on the road at Sacramento, then you're home, I guess, what is it, next Saturday, is it? Against
Friday the 19th. Yeah, Friday the 19th, we're at home.
Against
NCFC
Detroit.
is at home. And the 20th, the Courage are at home as well. So we got back-to-back home games next weekend. Come on out and check it out.
All right. I know NCFC is right now in a playoff spot, so good for them. Thank you very much, my man.
Thank you, sir.
You got it, Austin Deleuze, at Austin Deleuze on Twitter.